Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talkin Wellness. Today, we're going to be talking wellness in the workplace. So I'm really excited. I'm Kayla, and excited to be with you. And I got over here my co-stars.
Hello, it's Michael.
What's up? It's Christian.
Awesome. So like I said, we're going to be talking about, wellness in the workplace, and really what that means is like, how do we create a culture where we all take personal responsibility for our wellness, but also the wellness of wherever you work, whether you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, right? And you may be working with clients or customers, and maybe you have people working for you, or you work in an organization where you work alongside of, a team, and you work with many people, and that organization may be bigger or smaller, or you do different, little projects, just wherever you work. It's really valuable for anyone and everyone. But we're going to kind of talk about that topic. And I just wanted to start it and open it up with like, what does wellness mean? Because we use the term wellness a lot, and wellness is also in obviously the name of our podcast. But really, the way that we look at wellness is it's like a holistic approach to someone's well-being, right? And so when I say holistic, I mean like physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally, financially, like all of the things that make up a human being, and to really be able to look at that. And because human beings actually have to typically work for a living, right? Depending on whatever you do, but we all have to work in order to make a means to be able to live, right? And so how do we make kind of work well and meaningful, or at least be well in our workplace, even if it's not the most ideal job either, because I think people go through different seasons with work and trying to figure out like what it is, where their purpose is, or, what they actually want to do for a career for the rest of their life. And that can sometimes in itself be a struggle.
For sure.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're looking at wellness as holistically, but then how do we bring that into a workplace, and kind of what is, I guess, like the important attitudes and values to have, or like even when you're deciding on a job, like, how do you come up with like deciding like, is this the right type of work for me?
That's the interesting part, isn't it? Right?
Think most people think like that when they.
That's what I was literally just thinking. It's like, I think we live in a world where people don't get an opportunity to think about that too often.
Yeah,
they're like, I need money right now, so I'm a clean floors if I have to. I'm a sell fast food if I have to. I remember that's how I was back in high school. When I did my very first fast food job, it's like I wasn't thinking about what job was going to make me happy. I was thinking what job was going to help me like pay for like gas for my car, like what job was going to help me to buy food and hang out with my friends,
I would say probably like 10-15% of people probably know exactly what career they're going to go to from high school, and they're ready. They know exactly how to get there, and they do that. But even still, you end up working a job you don't like before that.
Yeah, for sure.
So back to that point, you're always going to end up working a job that you don't like, or something that's just going to kind of be time consuming, where maybe you don't want to spend that time there. So there always has to be that balance for sure, as far as your wellness in your work life, especially if it's not something that you're enjoying, because there's always that cliche of do something you love and you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life. But even if you are doing something you love, you're still going to be working. You're still going to be tiring, and you're still going to feel the repercussions of that. So it's all about balance. I mean, like, when it comes down to that.
What would you all say, like, can you think about what was like your worst job that you ever had?
So I'll be the first one to say, for those Floridians who have lived their entire life in Miami or South Florida, you might not know what it is. If you've been to Orlando, you'll probably know what it is. In California, we have boatloads of them everywhere, all over the state. And my very first job was a fast food. And let me tell you guys, I worked there for 2 years on and off. It was not fun. I used to work graveyard shift because I would do school in the morning, and then at night I would do graveyard. You know what I quickly discovered? When you don't have time to sleep, that's not a good mixture. And at that point, I was living with my mom in the mountains. So it's like I would leave the shift at like, I don't know, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. sometimes, and then I would have to drive up the mountain. That's a 45-minute drive. Get home by 4:45, closer to 5 maybe if I had to stop for food or something. And then when I get home, I don't sleep because I used to take my brother to school. So I would have to stay awake for another 2 hours so that I can take my brother walk because I wasn't driving. I walked my brother to school while my mom went to work, and then I came back to the house and I crashed. That was the worst job I've ever done. It was tough, but y'all gotta work, right? What about you?
I don't know. I'm probably in between 2, maybe 3. Okay, so I worked at for like
Fun.
7 days. So I don't count.
days?
So
Wait.
That's why it's
Okay.
the third. That's why it's the
Wait.
third. It was okay. So I don't want to be bougie. So I worked at a few good restaurants, and like I had got fired from the restaurant at the time. They'd fired like 10 of us because they thought we were all stealing. A lot of us were not. I say were because I included myself. I actually was not. I was not stealing, but I hung out with a group of people that.
Yeah.
So I was associated with that crowd. So it's perfectly fine. Whatever. So they cleaned house, they cleaned the restaurant out, and then I was like, all right, I need a job. So I went from making like the restaurant that I was at, they were probably like $120, $150 bills if it's 2 people.
Yeah.
So you get $30 off a table.
Yeah.
You go into you're getting like $15, $20 a
Yeah.
table.
It's
So
a
you're getting
change.
lucky if you get $2, $3, $4 tips.
Mm-hmm.
So after 7 days of just training and watching that, I was just like, there's no way. I'm not doing this. Can't do this. So I actually went to work to the place next door, which was the second worst job that I worked. It was an animal hospital, and it was just so boring. It was just so
Wow.
not my speed.
That's a weird mix.
It's just not my speed. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just I was in there. I was supposed to do things that I was supposed to take notes. I just didn't do them. There was things I was supposed to do so many tasks I just didn't do because I just didn't want to be there. Like that was the one job I can say I was a terrible employee. Like
Yeah.
I've worked hard in every job I've ever been in, even the job for 7 days. I'm like, this is too. I'm gonna work too hard for this place. It's not worth it. That place, I got there and I'm just like, there's no way. Like I can't do this. I was surrounded by like young girls that were in high school, like, you know, doing the veterinary thing. And I was just like, this isn't even my like career. I'm just doing this receptionist job. Like, and then like, it's funny enough, I got fired there they were like, okay, before you leave, make sure to do these tasks. And I promise you, right after they left, I left. And they caught me on camera leaving like right after. I was supposed to do tasks and I just cleared it. But so I left that job. But my worst job was probably the hospital. But it wasn't because it was like a bad job. It was because of the time. And I did transporting, so I would transport like dead bodies and stuff sometimes.
Wow.
So that was kind of weird.
That's
yeah,
an
I
interesting.
transferred.
You've done some interesting jobs.
I've worked like 15 jobs.
Yeah.
I've transported like dead babies, and that was
That's tough.
crazy
that's
weird.
Super tough.
Yeah, I remember I went to pick the whatever up, like I don't want to say the baby because it makes it seem. But I went to pick the child up. Yeah,
the
the
child.
individual, and I remember I got there and they handed me like a blanket, and I was like, okay. I kept walking. I'm like, okay, so like, where do I go for the thing? And they were like, that's it. And it was the baby was just like a little tiny thing wrapped in a blanket. And I didn't even realize I was holding him.
Oh wow.
So I'm just walking around with it,
So
or him or her, and I'm just like, where do I go for the baby? Like, where do I receive? Because I've done the other bodies, and you go there and you see a dead body.
Right.
You have to roll it off the bed. You have to put it
Wow.
in the thing that you take it to the crate. And it's weird. It's for sure weird. But the baby thing hit me because it was just like they handed it to me and it just like kind of walked away, and I was just like, I didn't know what I was doing, and then
that's
I was
wild.
holding.
They
I was
didn't
like,
tell you what it.
I didn't even realize what was happening because it was just like they realized it was probably routine for me to come pick up babies and routine for them to drop them off. So it was just like such a surreal thing for me. So that was like very traumatizing, even though I'm not someone that is too like, I think too heavily upon things. But that I always like, I'm like, that was a crazy
How long
memory.
did you work there?
About a year. And it's crazy. That's another thing I was going to say. This is right at the brink of COVID. So I started working there probably about mid 2019. And I stopped working at like 2020, the end of 2020.
So do you mind if I asked you, because now you've entered a whole new era where I feel that a lot of jobs, the majority of jobs out there, what causes stress is generally like responsibilities. What causes stress is scheduling. What causes stress is any type of like anything that's coming from the higher ups, right? Like if your boss is like screaming at you, like,
yeah.
where are these files that I asked for? It's like, oh, I'm just trying to finish it, right? So I feel that that's where a lot of the stress comes in most work environments. But you brought an interesting perspective where the stress is not necessarily coming from the work itself. It's coming from outside sources,
Yeah.
like seeing people not alive
And that
anymore.
definitely goes with industry, obviously, because
Well,
I'm
of
sure
course,
a
yeah.
lot of people in healthcare, especially during that COVID time, it hit people.
Of
For
course.
sure.
Like a
and then they're having to
tornado.
just keep showing up to work.
Exactly.
And
So
it's
that's
like layers
that's where
and
I'm trying to
layers.
go. Is like throughout that year, how did you keep track of your quote unquote wellness when you were kind of doing kind of traumatic
Yeah.
things like on a daily basis?
I mean, me as a person, I don't think I've ever been a person that's kept track of my wellness. I've just kind of like, I think I've always kind of put things off and suppressed things just because of the way I've grew up and stuff.
Got it. Okay.
But as I've gotten older, I've learned to talk about them and realize that those were kind of crazy things that happened, and deal with them in positive ways. You know, I don't necessarily feel the need to cry about them or like
Right.
release in that way, but I do release as far as like talk about them,
Yeah.
let people know my experiences, stuff like that. So I think that's the best way that I can do it myself. But like when I was working there, like I said, during the times of COVID, and there was a lot of people I talked to, you know, coworkers, and I wouldn't really think of. I always was very conspiracy about COVID, so I didn't really think too much about it. But a lot of people had you saw like how scared people were, because I actually worked in the COVID unit. And the reason I worked there is because you got paid well. We got paid like, it was like $40 an hour at the time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
Well,
Yeah.
that
I was
well,
like, bro,
that
this
was
is-
yeah, you were
anything-
basically a
for, like,
first responder.
for transporting. I wasn't even a nurse. I had no
well,
degree,
anything
nothing.
to do with COVID was like people were getting paid higher because they
It
were
was
like, there's
it
this
was
pandemic.
22
and
an
it's
hour
like,
regularly, 40 an hour for the COVID
Yeah.
unit. I was like, dude, sign me
yeah,
up.
Yeah, but I'm like you. I did not live in fear in those times. I know there was a lot of fear that people had, and I was supporting a lot of people that had a lot of fear, but I didn't.
I think it's because of your faith as well.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I have I don't think my faith is as strong as yours, but definitely that played a factor as far as like why
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. And I'm down. I mean, it's another episode with the conspiracy stuff too.
Yeah, I
so.
mean, yeah, for sure.
but we won't go
That's
there.
definitely one for another day. I mean, it's not a conspiracy nowadays.
No,
it's really not.
It's
Is
not.
it?
It's honestly
Because
like
the CDC, everybody's confirming it that vaccines will cause certain things now. You know, so but whatever. That's another podcast. For another
Anyways.
day. But
So in the
it was fun.
workplace, no, I'm kidding.
It was a fun job, but again, the hours were
Crazy, I'm sure. Yeah.
I worked from 2 a.m. to 10.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, terrible shift.
Wow.
Terrible.
Yeah, those graveyard
And
shifts
those
are
people
tough.
at those times are so different than the
They're
normal
so
day shift.
mean.
Really?
They're
Really?
different people. They're mean, but they could be mean. The doctors are more mean, probably. Just be.
It's because everybody's tired.
I wouldn't
get
say
it.
Wow.
mean, actually. I would say more people are more chill, actually, at night. During
maybe-
the day, they're like work time because it's busier. Those are
And
the
at
people that
night,
are
it's more,
scheduled to
like,
work these shifts
slower.
at more concentrated
Okay.
times.
Maybe
okay.
I'm just-
I could see that though because it's like
But being at a hospital, I'm sure being a patient, everybody seems
No,
mean.
what
Yeah.
I'm saying is
I
that
hate the
maybe
hospital.
I'm just like bringing my emotions of working graveyard shift and fast
Yeah.
food to the forefront.
100.
Okay.
I
Because
hate.
fast
people
food is
at 3 a.m.
different,
and fast food suck, dude.
I
Yeah.
think you know what
They're
it was.
so
Oh
rude.
yeah, that's true.
Ugh.
But I think it was
Probably because they have to deal with a bunch of people coming
yes,
in drunk.
yes.
Because
That's what
I
it
was
is.
that annoying person.
The staff for like that time was more like a camaraderie. Like we're the night shift.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
We're the people that like I would go to the certain nurses and certain doctors and
Yeah.
talk to them about things, and we'd have story times because it would be so dead. at
Yeah,
certain
yeah,
times.
for
There
sure.
would be nothing happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably transport 2 people in a 8-hour shift. It'd be nothing happening because there'd be like 3 of us, and there would be nothing happening.
Yeah.
But during daytime, you work a daytime shift, you're transporting 40,
But it
50
makes
bodies.
me think
It's like,
about
bro.
like in the hospital setting or like in these first responder like jobs and stuff like that. Like, what does the wellness look like for people? Because how people deal with that on a daily basis for
It's
years
wild.
and years, like they have to be taking care of themselves, or you almost become like callous. And you can imagine that like if you deal with somebody who is mean or is like rude or harsh, a lot of that is probably because of the years of just like being in this type of
Yeah. I would see those people that are in the medical field probably like they've probably been through the most traumatic work
Yeah,
experiences
yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
You imagine you're trying to save a life and then like the person's not there anymore because you
it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
remember
terrifying.
specifically a patient. I have so many stories. I was only there for a year, and I have so many stories I remember off the top of my head. And I've worked jobs way longer than that,
Yeah.
you know. So it just shows like the
The
amount
impact,
of stuff you can impact. And again, I was a transporter. I was just going in the room, meeting them once, and walking out. These people were
Wow.
working with these patients every day, all the time. So I remember there's one patient, I was transporting her out of the hospital, and it so happened that she had been in the hospital for a year and a half. She was in a
Wow.
coma. It was during COVID times. She had pneumonia. She came out. COVID was happening. She got COVID, got back in a coma, came back out, got pneumonia, went back in a coma, came back out, and then this is the time. Like I was there now, and she was feeling better, and it was finally time for her to clear. But you could see how her face, and I saw it in my sister when she was in the hospital for like a little bit, how the antibiotics kind of swelled her face. But hers was so much more because she'd been there for a year. She looked like a blown up kind of like balloon. I was like, and she was like 7 or 8. I was like,
Oh
bro.
no, a child.
Yeah, like imagine you're 5 or 6, and then you spend your next year and a half like in the hospital.
A year and a half. Gosh.
It's crazy. I was
yeah.
like, and that was just one child experience that I
Yeah.
had. There were so many. Anytime I went in this like the child unit, I was like,
Ugh.
it's
I know,
such a
I have
weird experience,
such
bro.
a respect and like a different type of, I don't know, view for doctors and nurses and things like that. Like even the ones that like, because I've had experiences with doctors and nurses that are where they're like not as nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always go back to thinking like, you know, especially if they're like older, like how long have they been
It's not a
working
nice
here?
job.
Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
know, like what does their wellness look like? You know, but I will say I was at the children's hospital with my son yesterday. And they were the nurses were so nice, and it was just like they were so pleasant.
Yeah, because
you
they
know?
understand the importance of having like that positive outlook
Correct.
and like compassion, because you don't know what's gonna happen in those hospitals.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I noticed too. Like when I walked in there, you almost felt the need to smile in those units.
Yeah, yeah.
And like have a sense of
To
like
bring
happiness.
positivity, to
Even
bring
when you go in the rooms
sunshine.
and you could see kids struggling, and you're like, hey, da da da.
Because that makes their day, like that
Yeah.
little bit of kindness can spark a light to say like,
100%.
because I'm in this, I mean, who wants to be living in a hospital?
It's
you know,
Of course.
so.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate the hospital. I've never liked it, and
Yeah.
working in that job didn't make me like it more.
Right.
It just made me respect what's happening
Yeah.
inside of it for
Yeah.
sure. Like
Yeah.
things are you like there's so many moving pieces, and because I was transport, I worked with everybody
Mm-hmm.
because I was moving people from room to room. So you see how people go from dialysis to surgery to ICU to CT scans to emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy how things work for thousands of people all at once, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a crazy industry, but like there's so many other jobs that function like that as well. Like you look at police officers. I was someone that didn't have much respect for police officers because of like how I grew up and like you know the reputation that they've had. But like as I've gotten older, you see and you think of how many
For
things they
sure.
do.
Well, they're very
as first
stereotyped too.
responders.
Like,
Yeah, 100%.
there's not good people in any industry.
Exactly. The bad eggs
they're-
make them all look bad.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you cannot, because I am right there with you.
And
like,
I think it also having friends work in that industry and seeing them like do it and put themselves in the line of fires also gave me that perspective as
Yeah.
well. Because you're like, dude, like it is a job, and ultimately we all work jobs to make money, but you're putting yourself like you're responding to things and issues and conflicts
at
that could
risk.
you know
you're always at
change
risk.
your life.
You're always at risk. I think it takes a specific type of person to get into these industries, and I think a lot of the time the wrong people get into those industries, and then you have these like bad officers or these bad doctors
Yeah.
or whatever. But essentially, so we'll go back to for me, my experience is I've actually never worked a job that I did not like. Because I love to work. I've always been that way. I remember I could not wait to be able to like
Did you like
turn
making
15.
money, or did you like just working?
I like making money because when I was a kid, I had like 3 businesses when I was in elementary school. Like I was tutoring, car washing, and selling candy. So I did like the aspect of making money, but I love people. So I like to work.
You're just like that type A personality.
I'm just like I've always loved to work. I remember I was like waiting for my 15th birthday because I was able to get like a real job, and I wanted to just go to work and make money and like work. But I did have like horrible bosses. So like I never did not like the work because I worked at grocery stores. I've worked in as a bartender, as a server. I worked as like even I did like a man job where I like cut wood and like when I was in the mountains and like stacked wood and like did all of the like yard stuff. And I liked that too. But it was people that I worked for that I didn't like. And I think sometimes that's where the struggle for sometimes people to stay well is if they're in a toxic work culture or have very toxic leadership.
Yeah.
You know, and that I think was one of the biggest stressors, more so than like jobs themselves sometimes. Oh, I'm wrong. I did have one job that I did not like.
Okay.
I just thought about it.
South Florida wellness. No, I'm kidding.
no.
I'm kidding.
I worked for
Oh, that sounds like an awesome job too.
no, because I worked for okay, so I worked there. The reason I didn't like it is because I was like an administrative job, you know, like where you had to like, you know, you have pretty girls that like sit at the front desk for when these rich people come in to buy. Like it was
Is
just
that where you were?
that's where I was.
That's
yeah.
what you were.
Yeah, and you go in and you like serve them and you like get the realtors and stuff. And I was like younger and like it just was like, and I just saw like I met like people that had a lot of money. That
Not
were
that
just
you're
not
not a pretty
nice.
person. No, I think you are. I could never see you doing that kind of job.
know,
That just seems so weird for like you
that's why I
imagine
did not like
walking
it.
in and
Yeah.
seeing Kayla trying to sell you like seductively.
No,
I'd be like,
ugh. It was
okay.
horrible.
No,
it
I
was
can't,
horrible.
man.
It was the worst job ever. So I actually just remembered that. I actually just remembered
so
that.
funny.
Yeah, I did not like it. I did not like the people. They were just like mean and greedy and entitled because they had money, and I did not fit into that culture at all. So that was like,
Yeah, that's hilarious.
everything else I've always loved to
Right.
work, but that to me was like, ugh. It
But
just
look at the key common denominator here, right? We were there and we decided to take a step forward. I think that's the crucial part, and I feel that's where a lot of people get stuck in that fear, which is normal, right? I think we're all afraid of leaving a job because we don't know
Not
what's
me.
gonna
I
happen
quit,
next.
I quit when I was
Right,
done,
and
bro.
that's cool.
I can see that.
I was one of those people where I'm like, bro, this job sucks. I'm out of here.
Right.
Like, I'm not
But
wasting.
some
'Cause
people
my mom
don't-
would tell me that. She'd be like, "Don't flip. You don't want your resume." I'm like, bro, screw that. I hate this job. Like, I will talk to my next person that's is gonna hire me, and I promise you they will like me.
There
It
you go.
won't be an issue. And
But
it
you
never
see,
was.
not everybody has that mentality or that capability.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree 100%.
So it's like I keep thinking of people in my personal life who have described to me jobs they don't like, or they're in a job they don't like, and it's it's always doing something that they're not passionate about.
right,
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I'm not saying like go ahead and quit your job and like find your dream. No. Obviously, there needs to be a process, right?
Right.
You need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself
Gotta
and
be
your loved ones.
realistic. To a
You do.
degree.
I always give people the advice of like it's better to look for a job while you have a job.
Yeah.
So like if you're because really that's what this is about is like if you recognize like that you're miserable in life, like life is too short to wake up every day and be miserable because of the place that you work at.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I do believe there's plethora opportunity. I truly believe this. Like I don't think that there's not. I just think people have to go out and seek that. And if you're not willing to go out and seek that, then and thinking it's just going to come to you, you're going to probably struggle. So if you're in a job and you are like, I am not happy here, start questioning like, what is it, you know, like that would make you happy? And sometimes it's people's like anywhere they go, they wouldn't be happy because they have to deal with self first.
Yeah.
And if you are just somebody who wakes up, you know, and you're unhappy every day, you probably have some internal work to do, you know, because how we show up when you think about like, how do I bring wellness to my workplace? I think of like a few things, right? Like I think one, you know, how we show up is super important. So like attitude, we have control over our attitude, and that is a big thing. Like having a great attitude can get you really far in life. I think the second thing is personal responsibility, is like really being somebody who's like takes personal responsibility, has integrity, like I do what I say I'll do, and like, you know, people can just count on me. Like those are like key things I think that like will help you to be like a person that like just creates a culture of wellness, but also will propel you further in advancing life and wherever career you have, you know, and then just taking care of yourself in the process, because there is real work stressors that is normal and inevitable. You will never work, whether you're working for yourself. Like, people want to work for themselves all the time, but people don't realize how much hard, like, that's a hard work, you know, like, you have to be you have to be very self-disciplined. You have to, you know, your mindset just has to be very different, you know. And so that's why a lot of people, like, they want the entrepreneurial life, but they're not willing to put in the work, because oftentimes you're putting in a lot more work on the front end before you ever receive profit on the back end.
Right.
And most people need money now, you know. And so there's, you know, there's things to kind of look at, but I think the biggest thing is, like, wellness begins with us, you know, and then recognizing, like, what are my stressors in my current workplace, and how do I react to them, or do I respond to them? And so you think about, like, how do I respond to these things, or what happens internally when there's a stressor at work? Like, say there is a deadline, or say somebody didn't do what I asked them to do. Like, what is my, like, internal narrative and response to that?
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Because if we're not keep making sure that everything in here is okay, then it's definitely going to show in the job, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I've lived that. Last week we talked about it in my episode, right? Where my story matters, where I was at a point in my life where things were falling apart, and the way it looked is in the way you could see it is in my work life, in my relationships, in my school, right? So that's why I always tell people, like, I love it that one of the things that we work is that circle of support idea, right? Like, and I love the picture of, imagine like a dartboard, right? You're at the center, your rest of the supports are like at every other layer. But if you're at the center, there's a reason why you're at the center, because if that center burns up or disappears or whatever, the entire thing falls apart. Different to if the outermost layer burns out, you're still there. You're still guarded. You're still supporting yourself. So that's why taking care of yourself is huge, especially when it comes to the work. That's why we talk about it here all the time. You know, the idea of, like, make sure that you're getting enough rest. The idea that if you're going to take a break, make sure you take a break, and it's not like a break while working, right? It's crucial.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think that it's like a balance, because I think sometimes work ethic is so important, and I feel like there's a huge lack of that in this generation. And I'm not saying claiming everybody, but I almost feel like it goes back to that saying of, like, hard times create strong people creates easy times creates weak people.
Yeah,
you know. And I think about those things.
that's funny. The whole red pill community will just echo that whole last.
The what?
The red pill community.
What is that?
Red pill?
Like the Andrew Tates and people like that. You've heard of that whole community.
I didn't know they had a
that
name.
Whole last paragraph of what you just said about personal responsibility and about our work ethic, as far as our generation is not there, and as far as what was the last thing you said? I'm sorry.
You did the quote.
Oh, I did. You mean the quote part or the attitude?
The exact last thing you said.
Oh, okay. That strong people.
Exactly, and they say that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you never heard of the Red Pill?
I know the Red Pill. It's just I don't tend to listen to the.
No,
Red
I mean
Pill.
either. I'm just like
Sure,
that's
they
their
say
that's
they
their motto.
say X, Y, and Z. That's cool, but other stuff I'm like,
No, 100%.
okay,
Red Pill's
what?
traditional, old school, traditional Red
Yeah.
Pill. That's what Red Pill is.
Okay, I didn't know that. I just see that in terms of, like, I mean, it's kind of, to me, I could see how that is. You know, like,
It's like extremely conservative versus extremely what's the opposite?
Yeah,
of
but
conservative.
liberal,
Liberal,
or
yeah.
like,
yeah, I don't know.
It's literally that.
I'm an independent.
It's literally those two differences.
Even in that, that's another thing, right? Where we're talking about wellness. If we're truly going to look into these different areas to kind of find motivation, right? Like those guys, for example, that are very like, you be a man, stand up, work hard, right? Yeah, that's cool. But there's also a lot of things that and maybe this is getting into that conspiracy thing, or maybe getting into like people are getting hate, and that's fine.
No, for sure.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have a hard time listening to people who obviously are saying it to get popular.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
It's not about the message.
Half of the things
the person
they
saying
say,
the message is the message.
Exactly.
Sure.
It's I understand what they're saying, but it's the way they're saying it that pisses me off. You know, it's like yeah, motivate people. Some people need that kind of motivation where like get up and get to work.
Yeah. Well, I
what
think
are you
there's a
doing
balance.
here?
But can you also maybe take that down to a level of confliction sometimes?
What do you mean?
Sometimes, like let's say certain people are not liking what some people are saying, and maybe it's because it's some things that it's affecting them, or it's something,
or
that's,
like it's challenging.
like let's say
them.
something Kayla just said. Our generation sucks with work ethic. That would
Wait,
trigger
I
a
didn't
lot
say
of.
it just like that though.
She didn't say
Okay.
that.
What did you say?
No.
But
I'm not saying. Okay, what I'm saying is that
I agree with that point,
Young
though.
people
That sentiment.
suck.
no,
I
no,
agree with that sentiment that this generation's work ethic is
think-
not as good as previous.
Well, yes. Okay, so when I look at that is because I look at like even when you think of like the older generations, like my grandfathers migrated here and they had nothing and
That's
they
what I'm
had
saying,
to
yeah.
make. So like their work ethic was like, I need to feed my family. And it created just like my grandfather created out of nothing and became like, not, I don't think anybody's self-made because I think it's the support of people that help, people like whatever. But he like became
he had to
very
be the start of
successful,
everything,
started a
yeah.
business,
Yeah.
and he went through probably because he came here from Ecuador, didn't know English, like he had to go through so many trials and barriers, but became extremely successful, and it is 1,000% because of his work ethic and his drive for his family, and so that's kind of, I guess, the thing sometimes that I don't see as much because there's not that desperation. Desperation creates people will do amazing things.
Yeah, I mean they say
desperation.
adversity.
The
creates
gift.
strength.
I call
Yeah.
my story the gift of desperation. My desperation is 100% a gift. I would not be here today if it wasn't for the gift of my desperation. Yeah. So that's kind of my perception.
No. You're just trying to defend yourself. I get it.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Because I'm saying.
I'm kidding. I'm
Okay,
kidding.
okay.
I'm joking.
Okay. I mean, listen.
I get what you were saying completely, but
Yeah.
I also
This is not helping her wellness in the
I
workplace.
No, this
also
is good.
do
This is
think that, to that contrarian point, it is super true that there are a lot, and it's because of the reasoning.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have more distractions.
Yeah.
we have a lot more. We have movies.
I am
we have
saying
just
though, I
different
am
things
saying
nowadays.
the work ethic has decreased. Like I am saying that. I'm not saying everyone though. I don't want to stereotype everyone because I know there's a lot of hard
because the
working-
level of comfortability in general as people have,
Yes.
Can I offer a different perspective?
of course.
Just to throw it out there. Do you think that the worth ethic has come down, or younger people are starting to realize that they don't want to work the jobs that would normally require?
But work ethic, sometimes you have to work a job even if you don't.
Well-
But that's what I'm saying. We kind of, if you look
I agree too, though.
generationally,
That's a good point.
look
Yeah.
generationally,
Yeah.
right? Every generation before ours has been teaching the following, like, you gotta work hard. But if you gotta work hard, you gotta dedicate yourself.
Well,
That was the first generation, right? The what is it? I don't want to call it the older people.
Well,
like the 50s
no, but it
people.
is. It's like the whatever. But okay, but here's.
But wait, let me just finish it real quick, right? And then that generation taught the next generation, but that second generation was like, but I don't like the way you said it, so I'm going to shift the way that I'm going to say it for the next generation. You got to work hard, but you also got to you got to make sure you're good, right? So that generation heard it from this generation, right? Now that third generation, I don't like the way that they said it to me, so I'm going to say it to the next generation in a different way, so on and so forth, right? I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that we've been trying so hard. I at least the way I see it is that I feel that every generation has been trying to like teach the next one, like, okay, you need to work hard, but at the same time you need to like you should like follow your dreams. Just like if that's something you're passionate about, you should try to pursue it.
But
right?
wouldn't that be still working hard?
But that's kind of where I'm going at, is that let's say you have a kid who, like, I see it all the time. You have this kid who's a hardcore, like, I want to be a musician. Like, that's my dream. I don't want to do anything else in life. So, but we put him to work at Publix, for example, right? And then we put on this expectation: you got to work hard at Publix, you got to dedicate yourself, you got to work for me these hours, right? Is that they lack? Is that they don't lack work ethic, or that they don't, that they lack motivation? You kind of see where I'm
Well,
going
I
at.
agree with that, but I think at the end of the day, that's like so that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is no matter what this is what I would tell, like, this is what I tell my son is like, you will reap what you sow in life. If you do not sow seeds, and that's to me is work, right? It doesn't matter where you're sowing them. Okay. If you're sowing them into the wrong field, then yeah, you're not going to probably be happy, right? If I'm at Publix, my dream is a musician, I will not be happy. But now if my dream is a musician, but I need money to pay my rent and Publix is the only job that I have, then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to work hard. I'm going to go to Publix. This is not my dream, but I am going to be so motivated and use this to propel me towards music. So my music will be everything that I do outside of my making money right now until this dream will come up. That to me is, you have to sow seeds in order to reap a harvest. And so no matter what, if you're not sowing seeds, guess what? When it's desert and it's dry, I have not sowed seeds. And so it doesn't matter where you sow those seeds, but just be a seed sower.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember who I was listening to, but it was an older dude and he's successful. He was saying, he's like, I didn't want to be a salesman. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this. He's naming all these jobs he's worked, but he did all them to make money. But now what he's doing is his passion.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do all the unnecessary stuff in order to get to the
there.
thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about our generation. We are so quick to like just want to do our dream without working
without
hard
the humble
for it.
beginnings.
Or even if we do have a complete platform where our parents work and we're at home and they can take care of us and do it and we can live that dream, sometimes it's still a lot of work on YouTube to do all that and they're still not willing to put that work in.
Yeah.
So it really is due to work ethic. I really truly believe our generation's work ethic has gone down a lot, but I don't think it's like saying it's because we're bad people. I think it's due to the conditions that we live in life.
Yeah.
We're a lot more comfortable now. We have a lot more conveniences.
And I guess that's where I was trying to go with my thought process.
It's not like we're bad people.
It's that, and because, what's the wording that I'm trying to say?
Look at the next generation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I guess what I was trying to say is that every generation beforehand has kind of like taught work ethic to the next, but the next generation softened the blow.
Yeah.
You kind of see what I'm saying? So I feel I guess where I was trying to go at is that the reason why work ethic is not necessarily the way it was, say, 30 years ago.
Of course, things
is
change.
because generations have taught this current one that, like, hey, work hard, but if you have a dream, follow it.
I don't think it's exactly. I don't think it's to the point to where our generation is like work ethic is bad because we need to man up. Like it's not something like that.
It's not about manning up.
It's literally about the convenience that we have, the conditions we live in, the comfortability we have.
Yeah.
All
honestly,
that stuff.
to
it's
me,
really that.
Comfortability. I fear comfort.
It's like you said, comfort makes you weak.
Yeah.
It does.
Like, because you're just, I want to constantly be challenged, like, and I think that being challenged actually grows people. It just grows people. When you're challenged, you can't say that like it may be hard, but like there's like new growth that comes, with that. And I think that's actually what makes us like wiser, and that's how we increase, in our crops, and I'm using metaphorically language, but through challenge, not comfort.
And then it comes down to balance also.
Yeah.
Balancing that level of challenge with the opposite.
Right. Yeah, I think work ethic is important just for us in any aspect of our life, right? Like what we put into is what we get out. So what we put into our family, what we put into our relationships, like, so when you think about it, like, and you think about even your work, your job, it's the same thing. And so you have to have this concept of like, even if I'm unhappy here, this is what I always tell myself, and I've been telling myself for years, like, even if I'm not happy, like, my job is to add value, because I'm getting ready to position myself for the next position. And I think that everything that I've gone through has been equipping me for my passion and purpose, and if I will be willing to go after it and put the work in, then I will reap that harvest one day.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I'm really interested to kind of as we start kind of finding that lighthouse or the end.
Yeah, the closing point.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are going to listen to this episode are probably a lot of people who feel, they're going to see the title, which is like wellness in the workplace. They're going to be like, oh my God, How do I get tools to better my situation at
Mhm.
work, right? For whatever reason. It could be a job they love or a job they don't love. So, realistically speaking, I guess I would love if we could leave them, each one of us, with just a tool or a
Bit of advice.
Mhm.
bit of advice to, because I feel that we've all found our quote unquote
Coping
like,
mechanisms for ourselves.
not only coping mechanisms, but the job where we're really passionate about what we're doing,
Mhm.
right? So, and I feel that a lot of, but even in that passion, like, we all are constantly working on making sure that we're doing it the best that we can,
For sure.
right? Like, so I feel that leaving the viewers or the
Why
listeners,
don't you go ahead then? Tell
Yeah.
us yours.
I would start off by saying that I'll never forget. You know, it's similar to what Kayla was saying. You know, I've worked a lot of jobs where I've found passion in what I was doing, but it was really the leadership that I was working with that caused me to not want to work in that environment
Mhm.
anymore, right? But what I quickly noticed is that, like I said last week in our last episode, one of my biggest struggles was keeping things closed and keeping things guarded because I just don't feel comfortable with confrontations and stuff like that. But I'll never forget there was this one experience that I had, and I won't say who, so just in case they listen to this. But there was a supervisor that I had that came to me with, how do I say this? They said something about me that maybe their intention was to be positive, but what they really did was offend me. Like, it was a comment in the likes of, like, you're not that good at this aspect, you know?
Mhm.
Like, I know you do this, but you're not that good at that. And when they said that to me, my immediate reaction was like, whoa, pause. Like, that's not okay, man. Like, why would you say that? If you're trying to motivate me, that's not a way to do
Yeah.
it, right? And I held it for months. But just when I was about to leave that environment, that work, I spoke to that supervisor and I said, hey, I know I already put in my 2 weeks. I know I'm about to leave, but I just want to tell you something before I go. You remember that day when we were having that conversation where you said that thing about me and my ability, my capability? And he said to me, yeah. And I told him, like, I didn't like that. Like, that hurt a lot. And it hurt my motivation for weeks to come. And that person took what I said, and they heard and they said, I'm sorry, you know? So I think that, and again, it's just part of my thing, right? I tend to hold on to things, right? The problem with masks. But self-advocacy is huge in any work environment. You know, it's the idea of making sure that if you're not comfortable with something, let someone know, because at least you let them know.
Yeah.
If it continues after that, then you make decisions. But at least let them know that, hey, I did not like this, or I don't like how this is going, or I'm not comfortable here, or hey, this aspect of my work environment is affecting my productivity. And I know it shouldn't, but it is. So I need support in dealing with that.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I guess, you know, funny enough, and I know I say a lot. I love to give roses to South Florida Wellness Network. I know, and I do that a lot, but because it's an environment where our supervisors condone that, you know? Like, that's something that I love about working here, is that when I don't agree with something, I know I can come to Kayla. I know I can come to my other supervisor, Nikki. I know that I can come to my other supervisor, Krista, you know? And I know I can go to the CEO and be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't think it's cool. And she would respond and we would have a conversation, you know? So, but the only way those environments can happen is if enough people advocate. That's why I love unions, you know, because unions are a way to self-advocate with your support, with every other person in the workplace. You all stand up together and say, this is not cool. We've told you multiple times that this is not cool. We need change. Like, what was the last one that did it? I think it was Popeyes, was it? Or Starbucks? Or forgot. It happened a couple weeks ago. With these restaurants, they were like, hey, we don't appreciate that you're taking this percentage off of our checks to pay for our quote-unquote lunch. But if we don't take the lunch, you still take it off anyways.
Yeah, that's wrong.
That's not right. So they unionized, and they said, we're not going to do that. And they left the building. And guess what they did? They started talking about it to see how they can fix it.
Yeah.
That's the power of advocacy, right? If you want to make positive change in your workplace, and it's something realistic too, like, oh, I don't like that I have to work a lot. Well, that's not necessarily realistic, is it, right? But maybe the problem is, hey, I don't appreciate the fact that you're giving us work longer than my work hours. I have to go home, and that time that I can use to rest, I'm working it on completing these forms that you asked for me. Can we please keep it confined from the hours that I am meant to work? That's advocacy, right? And there's power in that. So I and that's something I'll say until the last day. I'm telling people to do it because I didn't do it, and it hurt me a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so advocacy is huge. That would be my advice for people. You know, if you don't like what's happening, you have the power to say something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good. For me, there's like a lot of things that there's a lot of tools I can give, but I guess like thinking about like I'm thinking about like what is my wellness tools today in my life. So I just have to be really honest, is like my work and the way that I view work is I view it like my work is unto the Lord. So even if I have a boss or people that are above me, I always do my work as if it's for God. And if I do it for God, then I'm always trying to do it to the best of my ability. And then the second thing is that I always stay like prayed up, like before and during throughout my day with God, like for everything that I do, the littlest things, like before I have a meeting, you know, before I'm like submitting a report, like I'm asking and inviting. And that's just like, there's just been so much power in that. And that's where I find my strength. But then other like applicable things is like having a support network, you know, outside of work, to where like when there is something hard that you're going through in the workplace or with even like colleagues or, you know, things that happen depending on what industry you're in, you can actually like be able to get it off your chest, as Mike was talking about how important that was for him.
Yes.
That's huge. Yeah. So like that's another really big thing. And then the last thing is okay, it just came out of it just like went out. That was support. And
well, so far, if we're being honest, we've gone through advocacy, support, and hope.
Yeah.
So which of the other two key recovery concepts?
I remember what it was. Okay. Everything difficult, I have trained my mind to believe that everything difficult that I walk through, whether it be like a mean person or something I'm going through, a situation at work or whatever, I always ask myself, how will this grow me? And so I switch my perspective, because I think it's the things that are difficult that enable us to grow. So now I actually look at difficulty, whether it be a conflicting conversation or just like anything. And this is super important for the workplace, because usually a lot of the time that's where people feel the most stress. I always am like, okay, God, how is this going to grow me? And I look at what opportunity do I have from this? And so now I've spinned it off into something positive, to where when I face difficulty, I can anticipate, okay, something good's going to come on the other side. So those are my things.
That's
Gotcha.
awesome.
I mean, I don't really have any like, what's the word, tools. But like a piece of advice I could give is just, you know, not to settle for less. And I mean that on both sides, as far as the balance spectrum, as far as like your mental health in the workplace, and as far as like you working too much, and just there's so many different ways I can mean that. And I can give the examples as far as, you know, in my workplace, you know, like maybe the Flanagan's thing, maybe it was like super dumb, but I didn't want to settle for something like that because I knew I wouldn't be happy in the long run. So that was something in my mind. I knew that it was maybe something that I would have to have a difficult conversation. Hey, I'm quitting before I even start. Because I know I'm not gonna be happy here.
Yeah,
you know?
that's so important.
So like little things like that, I think is super important, especially when you are young. And I want to make the emphasis on that, because when you are older, it is hard to quit jobs and get a new job and move on
like a
and try to
family
find
and
something.
all,
Exactly. You have so many more things that you have responsibilities for, you know, and you're just not going to be able to move on to jobs like that when you're older. It's just not a thing. So I do recommend, when you're young and like you have the ability to do so, to just not be afraid, not be so fearful of it. It comes down to self-advocacy too, because it's being fearful of that, like, because self-advocacy really is that fear of like someone saying something, and that's why you don't talk, and that's why you don't advocate.
Yeah.
So like that's really what it is. You got to be kind of fearless sometimes and be like, I don't want to work this job. It's not for me.
Yeah.
This isn't. I'm better than this job. Or and you kind of have that mentality of pride sometimes if you truly feel that. Not saying you are better than anyone.
Right,
that's
but you're
working
just
a
not
certain
happy.
job,
Right. You're just
but
like,
you
this
have to
is-
understand where your mind is and where your brain is and how you feel happy doing certain things.
Yeah.
And understand that a McDonald's worker isn't below you, but if you work there, you might be super unhappy, and that might have an effect on your life or someone else's life that's close to you. So it just comes down to like, I think something as simple as like, bro, like kind of be a little
Yeah.
selfish with certain
Absolutely.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're miserable every day when you go to work, then you should question, is this the work that I want for myself?
And it goes back to your point, like, you know, we have the ability to chase our dreams. So like maybe we're not chasing our dreams and driving F1 cars or being an astronaut, but we're doing something along the lines that makes us happy and motivates us and gives us purpose every day. And
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of people can not say they do.
And you can work a job and still chase your dreams. Trust me,
That's-
because
that's
we
what
all
I
do
was
it.
about
We
to
all
say.
do- I do it. You know, like I'm grateful because I have my dream job, but I'm also still chasing other dreams within working my dream job. You know, so sit with yourself and kind of uncover like, what are the things I love? What are my strengths? What am I really good at that just almost like comes naturally? Like this is an ability that like I just can do it a little bit with ease. What are the things that actually like, you know, make me super excited? Like I could do this for hours and just be lost in it. Think about some of those things, or like what are the things that make you cry because it's a cause that's like near and dear to your heart. If you start to unlock who you are, then you'll know like what avenue to go. And you could be working wherever as you're chasing your dream.
Yeah, and to add to that, I was gonna say the exact same thing. You know, and maybe let's be honest. Maybe sometimes your passion is not something that can be very lucrative, right? Like I know a lot of people who tell me their passions, and then
9 times out of 10
you can't make money off of it, right? But guess what? That doesn't mean you can't do it alongside to your job, right? You know, I always try to tell people, you know, and you guys hear me talk to Kingdom Come about movies, but you know, I from a young age I always wanted to work in movies, right? But I never really wanted to take that first step because I was thinking like I gotta make money, I gotta, you know, provide for a future family, like. But on my personal time, you know, when I'm away from everybody and I can just like use my wellness tools in my own life, right? I watch movies. I review movies. I talk with movies to my friends who like to talk movies. I write short stories or scripts so that I can write. Where I'm going at is that if you're truly passionate about something, like Kayla said, just because you're working in another field doesn't mean you can't still work on it in your own time.
Yeah.
And moreover, maybe it's not even that you want to work in that field. Maybe it's just a passion project.
Right.
Yeah. There's
Like,
no
maybe I
excuses,
love
really.
art.
Yeah.
You're a lover of art, but I don't want to necessarily work in art. Then guess what? Do it during the times where you're not working. You know, do it as a family thing. Do it by yourself for wellness. Do it with your friends. Like the bottom line is that going back to that circle of support idea. If you don't take care of yourself, everything else is gonna fall apart, right? So take care of yourself by doing stuff that's going to make you feel good at home so that when you come to work, you don't feel as drained or don't feel as like stressed out, you know? But if you are stressed out, like Kayla said, think about it for a second, you know? What is stressing you out? Can you advocate for it? Can you find support in your colleagues for it? Can you do you yourself need to do something in your own life to change that feeling or that emotion or that stressor, right? Take care of yourself, people. That's the most important thing we can teach you here at Talkin Wellness. Take care of yourself. It's the most crucial thing.
Awesome. So with that, we are going to wrap things up, and we do hope that you take care of yourself, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next time on Talkin Wellness.
Awesome.
Bye.